Hi there. So I'm Danny with Inspections West. We just got done doing the inspection on this house. So what we're going to do now is go through all the pictures we took, 250 or so pictures, maybe more. But we went through looking for major deficiencies or safety concerns, things that are normal wear and tear are not part of the inspection. And we don't do a code inspection because any home that's not brand new isn't going to meet, the modern standards. So again, we're looking for things that are unsafe or might end up costing a lot of money. So overall, the house is a bit neglected, some poor workmanship at some of the stuff they did in the inside. While we have the camera and we're right here, I'll kind of point that out, just give examples. For instance, the floors they did here just didn't do a very good job. And then the fridge, while he's here, we don't inspect the fridges, but there's some obvious issues here. One of them, it won't push back because the cord comes out the top and hits the counter cabinet here. And then if it were pushed out in, this door wouldn't open because it's right up against the wall. So kind of examples of some of the stuff we came across. So now we're going to go through these pictures. I started with the front side of the house and went around. Most of these pictures are just reference pictures for me, and there's a lot of them, so I'll move through them kind of quick. If you have a question with this video or the report, feel free to contact me. This report or this review is just a courtesy. The report supersedes anything we talk about in this report or in this review. Here I'm pointing out an exposed piece of wood here, this really common find. We call those exposed fascia board ends. Basically everywhere gutter ends, there's an exposed piece of wood. Water comes down off the roof and deteriorates these over time. Right now they looked okay, but a piece of metal flashing or roofing over these helps protect those. Screened openings for your foundation, those let air flow below the home, which is important. You want to keep an eye on the screens. Any holes in the screens are access points for rodents. Downspouts go into drains, keep an eye on those drains. If it's raining, you want to make sure water's not flowing out of these, which would indicate that they're blocked. We don't know where they're going, but they should be taking the water somewhere away from the house. Vented eaves, we'll talk a little more about those coming up. And so with the siding, here I'm looking at this knot mark. So your siding's a composite wood siding. It's basically wood particles pressed together. And from the 90s, this product, so I don't let anybody quote me on the brand, I'll make a reference to it because there's people who like to argue facts, but it's LP brand siding. This type of siding from the 90s was known to have issues, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go along. But most common damage this type of siding has is water soaks in at the bottom edges and swells it and deteriorates the siding, and that's kind of what we had throughout the exteriors of the house, is swollen and deteriorated bottom edges, which I'll have plenty of pictures of coming up. Porch area, view below the porch, not much to talk about there. So water pressure, we talked about the sewer scope. We don't have to do a sewer scope. Again, I wrote you an email, but this is an access for the sewer line, and it just goes a couple feet until it gets to a tank, and then that tank has a pump in it that pumps the sewage to the city sewer, and that whole system is maintained by the city of Olympia. And we'll talk more about that coming up, but that negates the need for a sewer scope. Water pressure, we had over 90 psi. 40 to 80 is the range that's recommended. Anything over 80 is considered high because it'll put extra pressure on pipes and appliances. Most appliances are rated for 90 psi or 80 psi max. So a lot of people like the extra pressure. That's not extremely high. But something we'll note in our report, something that a plumber can put a system on to lower that pressure. The front faucet leaks at the valve handle when we turn it on. Really common find. We always suggest improvements there. Looking pretty good, but you want to keep the landscaping down away from the siding materials, more like this, so there's a little gap between the ground and the siding. And here's a close-up of one deteriorated piece of siding. So I go through with the screwdriver and I kind of poke around the bottom edges when I see this type of siding, and we did find, again, deterioration at several areas that we'll cover a little more as we go along. Garage door was fine. So this is looking up above the garage at the siding, and here's where you can kind of see how the siding's starting to swell. Left side of the home, so we're going to zoom in on these E-vents up here, screen openings that let airflow into the attic. And we do see evidence that the screens are gone and birds are nesting in the attic. We actually saw live birds flying out of those openings. Vegetation contact, lots of that going on around the house, so we always want to keep that vegetation trimmed away from the house because it'll damage the siding and cause rot. This is the alarm for the city sewer or septic slash sewer system. It says a number here, call City of Olympia. So again, that's part of that whole septic system. Lower edge of the siding deteriorated again, and then here we can see the bird droppings here and where birds have been going in and out of a lot of these events. There's a zoomed in picture. So ideally those nests would be removed, birds would be removed, and those would be rescreened. This is looking up at so there's siding materials here that overlap these siding materials here, and it's hard to see in my pictures, but a lot of those edges, lower edges, are swollen. I see that there. Gas meter, left side of the house, there's a valve here. If there's ever a need to, you could use a wrench and shut off gas to the house right there. This is where the dryer vents out. You want to keep an eye on that, keep that vent clean. More vegetation contact. Bottom edge of the siding again, deteriorated. Back of the home. So on the back of the home, I noticed this siding here, just at this section alone, has been replaced at some point. It's a plywood material, which is a little more hardy than that other siding we have, which is the LP siding. So obviously somebody's aware that there's siding issues, because again, this whole piece has been replaced, or this whole section of the house. This, however, has not, so it's just this area. Deteriorated lower edges. Again, we're focused on the bigger issues. There's a little bit of tape holding that screen, sliding door screen intact, but not something we're really focused on. The patio cover kind of is what it is. It doesn't look like it was necessarily professionally framed, but we're looking for signs that it's unsafe, and it looks like it's serving its purpose of keeping the patio area dry, so no big deal there. PVC type roofing. Vegetation contact, rose bushes growing against the house, more deteriorated siding, and then on the back side of the house still. This is a good close-up of the bottom edge of the siding materials. Again, you can see how it's frayed and deteriorated. Windows are really dirty, so we look for what we call failed seals at all the windows, and that means moisture's gotten in between the double panes. When they're this dirty, it's hard for us to detect that from a home this age. We're used to finding a few of those, but we just couldn't confirm because of how dirty the windows are. E-vent screens, again, it looks like these probably had birds nesting and somebody just duct taped them. That's not the best method, because you want airflow through those, so we'd suggest taking the tape off and screening those. More lower edge siding materials damaged. Crawl space access, we'll come back to that here shortly. But the siding materials around the fireplace pop out on the right side of the home and above the crawl space access also deteriorated. Below the pop out on the right side of the home, we have a foundation vent screen that's damaged here, so that's plenty of room for rodents to get in. Fences, pretty rough shape, deteriorated, fence boards and panels and leaning, so some of the fences are in need of repairs or replacement. Typical cracks at the patio and driveway. They make products you can seal those cracks with to help prevent them from getting worse, but overall look good. Here I'm just at the front of the property. I'm looking for the city's water meter and shutoff valve. Usually it's in a box in the ground, but I can't see it. It may be covered with vegetation or landscaping, but I usually like to take a peek at that. Headed up to the roof. So the story of the roof is it looks like it's the original roof. It's never for sure, but looking at these type of shingles, it's a 3-tab shingle from the 90s. Usually those are a 20-year roof. The house is over 20 years old, so just from that alone, I would say the roof needs to be replaced. There's also quite a bit of wear, including broken shingle edges and heavy granule loss, which I'll show you an example picture of shortly. Chimney area looked okay. So these dark areas are where the granules are thin. Granules protect the house from the sun's rays, and so once those are gone, the roof can deteriorate even faster. So now kind of above the kitchen. So this is a plumbing vent. All the drain lines have vents that go up through the roof. That lets air flow in and lets everything drain properly. but the rubber boots, the kind of the flashings around all these are really deteriorated, a sign of an old roof. So those are a potential leak source. And then this one above the kitchen is also capped or plugged. A lot of times they'll plug those when the house is being built, or if they need to afterwards, and they do a pressure test where they fill the plumbing with air and check for leaks. In this case, it looks like somebody just never removed this cap. So that should definitely be done. Gutter debris, lots of gutter debris in some areas of the gutters. That's the venting for the water heater and furnace. Again, damaged plumbing vent boots. Damaged plumbing vent boots. So no major deficiencies specifically with the roof shingles, but again, old. And I did see one spot that will come to at the garage space attic where there's evidence that there may be a slow leak, or maybe it could have been fixed at some point, but evidence that the roof has failed. Headed into the crawl space, more deteriorated lower edge of siding. So the story with the crawl space is mainly we have several pieces of insulation that are falling out of place, and that looks like the result of rodent activity. They like to get in the insulation and nest, so lots of evidence of rodents down there. Overall, it looks good. It's dry, but definitely any of these foundation vent screens that are damaged should be sealed up, and somebody should be proactive with controlling rodents and replacing any fallen insulation, rodent openings, rodent droppings. Here's one area of the crawl space where this black plastic, the vapor barrier, isn't covered in the ground. That should all be covered in the ground to keep groundwater vapors below. And then now I'm looking at, this is the area below the laundry room. So this is the dryer duct. So that's where the dryer would exhaust down and through to the exterior, and in this case it's obviously separated here, so that needs to be reconnected so that moisture and lint isn't being blown into the crawl space. Inspection of the crawl space somewhat limited. As inspectors, we're not allowed to damage stuff, so we're not allowed to pull away this insulation to see stuff. So we did have evidence behind the water heater that it may have, the previous water heater probably may have failed and caused some water staining, so we'll talk about that here in a second. GFCI outlet in the garage that has a reset button for exterior and garage outlets, so if any of those aren't working, you check that reset button there. Chain drive garage door opener, that and the safety features work. Typical cracks garage floor, that's pretty much every garage. So water heater. So again, if you look closely back here, I see a lot of dark staining. So it does look at some point there's been water back here. Everything tested dry now, so it looks like a previous condition. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go along the review. This is the venting for the water heater. This normally would have been straight up and venting out, but in this case it's somewhat detached, so there's potential for the exhaust air to escape the vent hood here, so that should definitely be improved. Water heaters 2009, typical service life of water heaters 10 to 15 years, so it's considered an older water heater. It is working, 40-gallon gas, so we'd suggest at the least budgeting for replacement. Furnace, original furnaces can typically last a lot longer if they're serviced and maintained. So it's a Payne mid-efficiency gas furnace, and I'll talk a little more about that in here a second. And here's the water staining I saw around the platform for the water heater and furnace. And this is me checking it with the moisture meter. Again, it's indicating the area is dry right now. Electrical panel, not much to talk about in there, pretty straightforward. Nice and clean in the inside. Lower attic access, so there's a little attic space above the garage that we're able to access from the garage. So this is what we like to see attic look like. It looks like newer lumber. That means there's good ventilation and no moisture. There was one area, there's storage up there, so kind of limited inspection. Where I see dark staining at the roof sheathing, that could be an indication of a roof failure. So pretty minor there, but definitely something worth getting checked out. Inside the furnace, so I took the cover off to gain access to the filters, and looking up there I do see that the filters look new. But gas furnaces servicing is always recommended if we don't see recent service, so that's going to be in the report. This is just the data label for the furnace. Headed upstairs, security system control box. We don't inspect those, usually they're off when we're inspecting. This is the thermostat for the furnace, pretty basic thermostat. I kicked it on and the furnace did kick on. Upper attic space. So it is well insulated. Right now it looks dry, but looking here I see moisture at the wall sheathing over the back side of the house, and then I see staining at the roof sheathing. A lot of that looks like the result of, this is a duct from one of the exhaust fans in the bathroom. Yeah, the picture didn't turn out a little bit here, but it's detached from the roof fixture. Normally it's connected to a roof fixture, so all that moisture is being blown out. It's separated, so a lot of that moisture is accumulating in the attic, so that should definitely be fixed. Overall, nice and dry. Evidence of some moisture up there. When the roof is replaced, all that sheathing would be checked and any damaged sheathing would be replaced. This is looking in the attic. This is at the eaves where we saw the evidence of bird nesting, and we do see bird nest up there. Upstairs bathroom, master bathroom. So same condition at both upstairs bathrooms. The caulk around the faucets failed, so we don't want shower water getting in behind the shower wall. And then both tubs are slow to drain. From our experience, that's usually hair and stuff inside the trap. Those can usually be cleaned out pretty simply. Other than that, we were looking pretty good up there, except for never mind. So it's the downstairs bathroom. Sink was leaking. Master bedroom. The smoke detector in the master bedroom looks old. The rest of them look like they're newer. So anytime we see an old smoke detector, we always suggest replacement. Typical wear, worn out screen at one of the windows up there, not something we're really focused on. We don't inspect the wall or the window mounted AC units. That's considered, portable. And again, poor workmanship. The paint job's pretty rough in areas. And then we don't see carbon monoxide detection upstairs. Do we have any downstairs, Dalton? No. Okay, so no carbon monoxide detection that we can confirm. There's 2 smoke detectors. I'm assuming this is a smoke detector. It could be a CO. Usually they're labeled the carbon monoxide, so I'm assuming that's not one. So we'll need carbon monoxide protection. Downstairs bathroom. Decent leak below that bathroom sink at the drain line, so we'll recommend repairs there, obviously. And then poor workmanship is showing some floors again where they're not done real well. And these are just individual tiles that somebody just glued down. The door to the downstairs bathroom, it makes contact with some and it just doesn't shut right. So we'll suggest improvements there. Laundry area, we have an exhaust fan. So one of the hoses at the laundry area, there's a slow drip happening. So obviously we'd want to see that fixed. And then looking behind the washer and dryer, so this little area here, so on the other side of this wall is the water heater, and we saw the evidence of past moisture there. We also see dark staining, which is evidence of moisture there. Anytime we see black growth on a wall, we mention organic growth or mold-like substance. We're not supposed to say mold as home inspectors. So we just mention a mold-like substance. Some people are really sensitive to mold or really concerned about mold. There's certain types of mold that can be harmful to your health. So we always report the presence. Just something to be aware of. If you are really concerned, you can get somebody out here to test for mold. We're not able to do that. I also saw where there's past repairs at the walls behind the washer and dryer. Here's that leak at the supply hose. Poor workmanship again. It looks like they probably had a bigger handle here at one point and replaced it with a smaller handle. We saw a defect in the ceiling. We checked with the moisture meter, but it didn't appear to be anything. Again, windows were really dirty, so limited our inspection as far as being able to tell failed seals. Switch over here controls the fireplace. There's a pilot light. It's a gas fireplace, so you could leave the pilot light on and turn it on and off using that switch. Right down here, there's a little plate that will remove, and it gives you access to the components. Here's the gas valve. If it's not going to be used, best practice is to pull this little plate off and shut the valve off and keep it off. Kitchen. So we talked about the refrigerator. It doesn't fit in its spot. Door won't open if it did fit in its spot. Older dishwasher, we just run a quick cycle just to see if it runs and drains, so we can't tell you how well it does dishes. This is part of the drainage for the dishwasher. Normally there'd be a chrome, it's usually a chrome cap that covers this, so that's missing. And then below the sink, they put some plywood down here to cover what was the previous damaged base of the cabinet there from water damage. Oven, we don't have an anti-tip bracket. They all come with a little metal bracket that screws to the floor and prevents the oven from falling forward if a kid were to open it and put their weight on the door. And that was the last picture. So you'll get all that information, or at least everything that's considered a deficiency, in the report. If you have a question when you're looking at this video or looking at the report, feel free to contact us. Thank you.